Hi folks, welcome to Hat Friday. Those of you that don't know what Hat Friday is, it's a reminder that it's Friday. We have to differentiate the days in lockdown because we have no other way. We're going to have a chat about the presser, which I'm pretty sure will lead into a discussion if you take a look at the background of the way our press has behaved today. There's both a Leslie Riddick piece from yesterday and Mr. Bell, Peter A. Bell, has a piece. Well, we'll talk about it. So, James, the press conference, what did you think?
Oh, rather passé today, I thought. Daft questions for the press as usual about what you're going to do about face coverings. We understand you're going to make it mandatory. Really? We've not made the decision yet. So, and their guns were spiked on a couple of things because they thought they had nice trip-ups for the First Minister and she wasn't interested in talking about them. I found it all rather droll today, actually. And nice to see the Chief Constable getting a wee run out. But other than that, I thought it was boring, mate.
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't find it. It was one of the duller ones. You've got to bear in mind, we watch this 6 days a week. And it's been going on for weeks. Just a minute. I don't want to deafen people with a noisy mic. Hopefully that's better. Yeah, having the Chief Constable, I think he was there because of the possibility that there might be a lot of house parties this weekend. Last weekend there were a lot of people out, possibly because they'd had cabin fever. It was a police constable had a better phrase, wasn't it? Demob happy, but then you have to be old to know what that means. That was last weekend. This weekend it was, I would say, cabin fever. People are still wanting to go out there and meet their friends. It might be raining, so there could be house parties. We've discovered that the police will clamp down on house parties, and the police want the neighbours to grass everybody else. Anybody who does have a house party, they want them to grass them up to the police.
Okay. I thought there was quite a lot in it, actually. I thought it was a very good indicator of the change in style we see now. This is no longer about just coronavirus. There were questions about them deciding not to produce data for the schools, which has always been a big stick for the media to beat the SNP with, the education stick. How they expect them to produce data when there's been nobody in school, I'm not quite sure.
Aye, and meanwhile, we saw yesterday that 44% of English schools didn't go back on Monday as Boris asked them for, and none of the media are questioning the UK government on that.
Because the UK government isn't the SNP.
Aye, basically, they don't want to catch it, but
I notice, according to Matt Hancock, the Tories have only been in power since December.
Well, that's an excuse they've been rolling out ever since December.
I thought that was good. But the reason the Chief Constable was there was, I think, because of the demos. I think what they wanted him to say was, we're going to stop them. And that was well avoided by everybody.
Yeah, he said he's not going to just stop people having demos.
I thought he performed quite well today, actually.
He's not the best. He's nothing like. It's a bit unfortunate putting him on at the same time as Jason Leach, who is he's a top-notch performer, isn't he? And
he strikes me.
aye, but
I thought he
the policeman's a policeman at the end of the day. I know he's Chief Constable, but his job doesn't really entail PR or speaking to the nation on live television.
Well, yeah, it's a big contrast. Jason Leach can say things, and he has said things in the early days of this emergency that perhaps he would have regretted, but he got away with it because he's a very good communicator, as is the First Minister. Chief Constable, you're right, Jimmy, he's not supposed to be a good communicator, but it helps.
Well, as I say, I mean, there were two questions that really, the two big questions that weren't really related to coronavirus was the well, loosely related, I suppose, is the Black Lives Matter demos. The data was the other one. And of course, they all wanted Nicola to come out and say, yes, we're going to make it mandatory to wear face masks, so they could then say, oh, you're just following Westminster. There's been an interesting argument about Westminster making them mandatory, and that was fear that they would be left behind by the Scottish government, which I thought was interesting.
I think there's also an argument for taking a look at some. I mean, Westminster's kind of done things half-assed and back-assed at the best of times. To be introducing a 14-day quarantine now seems ludicrous. To be making face masks mandatory seems ridiculous now. But then the reason for making face masks mandatory now is probably the fact that there's availability of face masks, because a few weeks ago they didn't have enough for their bloody medical staff, never mind for the punters to wear when they're on the bus.
Well, they're still making giving vague advice or guidance, as they like to call it, about face masks. I noticed both the First Minister and Jason Leitch was saying that, yes, the person who might be carrying the virus but doesn't know it should wear it. And they both gave a very muddled advice about who should be wearing a face mask. If you're asymptomatic, how do you know? You know?
I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. They both said everybody should wear face masks.
No, they boiled it down to it should be the person that might be infected. No, I wrote it. I was very careful.
No. She stood there and actually said, person with the face mask protects you. The other person with the face mask protects themselves and you. She actually stood there and explained that. She took.
Well, we can disagree about that. It's possibly I didn't have my hearing aid in, so we could.
I was about to suggest that might have been the case.
Anyway, before you two argue about that, can you argue about something else?
Yes, I'm quite happy to move on.
Well, my big bugbear today is, as you can see in the background, the Scotsman produced that headline: Health Secretary apologises for drunken abuse.
So she's been partying, has she?
Well, if you look at the photograph, I would suggest it looks like she just might have been.
Just had a wee swally.
It turns out, once you get into the meat of the actual article, that she apologised to an NHS doctor who was abused by a drunk patient after the first weekend. It wasn't her that was drunk, but I defy anybody that sees that Scotsman headline not to consider the health secretary had gone out, got pissed and beaten somebody up. Absolutely.
Norrie, you're breaking up something awful, mate.
Sorry. Absolutely outrageous. Is that any better?
Well, I can hear you.
And then I'll show you a screenshot of the...
Norrie, your signal's awful, mate.
It's all right to me, Jimmy.
Is it just, it might be your signal picking it up.
It's okay from where I am, Jimmy.
Anyway, we'll just keep going. Alex Cole Hamilton had to issue an apology for a lie he told, which was then reprinted by the Press and Journal, who also had to apologise because they didn't check their sources.
Has the Scotsman apologised yet?
Did the Scotsman print it as well?
Well, the headline you're showing says the Health Secretary apologised for drunken abuse on the Scotsman.
No, I'm talking about the claim that Alex Cole Hamilton made about the care home. I think it was in Eyemouth.
Oh, no, you're right. No, it was the claim was, I can tell you what happened, is from the care home in Skye, which had a really bad time, lots of deaths. The accusation was that somebody was sent from there to a care home not very far away, but on the mainland, and somebody died. Now, nobody died, nobody was sent there, so it was complete fantasy.
Well, apparently he came out with this in Parliament.
Yes. Aye, and his excuse for it was that he got the information from a reliable constituent. So he's nothing to apologise for, really. He's apologised for I don't think he has apologised for misleading Parliament. He's just made it clear that the information was incorrect.
But this,
But I remember him being gleeful and enjoying trying to put the health minister on the spot with that one.
Well,
So,
I'm looking forward to the first time he stands up in Holyrood and makes another accusation, and the minister turns around and said, "You're making this one up as well."
Just the
well,
three words. Are you sure?
Cole Hamilton has a history of this.
Oh, it's called form.
It's not the first time he's opened his mouth before he actually checked the facts.
He gets a bit excited when he thinks he's found something out, and he just blurts it out. He's a bit like Neil Findlay in that regard. He doesn't check things before he actually spits it out.
Well, Neil Findlay's famous one was, "Where's the 1725 from some railway station?" And it was actually ScotRail pointed out to him that, sorry, don't know what timetable you're looking at, but it's not ours. There isn't a 1725. Ochtermochty or whatever.
I suppose you've got to expect it for these Diddy parties that they're going to have Diddy MSPs, but you didn't necessarily expect it for the leaders. Did you see Richard Leonard's column this morning in the Record? That's a belter.
What's he saying?
He led with, "There is no appetite for a separate state." That was the whole. That was the whole gist of his article, that things have to change after, but we wouldn't be talking about independence because there's no appetite for a separate state. I'm assuming that he hasn't seen any of the latest polls. In fact, I'm assuming he's not seen any polls since about 1979 or something.
I think I don't really worry. These kind of headlines in papers like the Record don't worry me anymore. Look at what happened yesterday. They had another announcement about that they want us to pay for a new royal yacht, and I love these things. I love these things because every time these things come out, most people in Scotland think, "What? Let's just go independent."
Well,
come on, it's a bit much when you've got Digby Jones' opinion being taken as serious. His opinion wasn't taken serious when he was actually involved in politics.
this will be Digby Jones that thinks the First Minister's been sneaking off to the hairdresser.
Aye, that's the man.
Oh God, it's so serious, isn't it?
So the depths of his constitutional rating is haircuts and yachts.
Didn't he used to front the CBI or something, that well-known right-wing think tank, representative of all business?
Is he?
By the way, we are going to cover the secret funding of biggest businesses in the country, I hope, today.
Well, I'll have to now that you've mentioned it, won't I?
67 billion going through the back doors. Every company's got to sign a secrecy clause before they get the money.
Well, no, they don't now, but that's what the Bank of England wanted.
Okay, well, that's everybody tell. They know about it now.
But I can't remember the list. But most of the easiest way to find out who got the money is to look at who's now paying people off.
Aye, basically, Rolls-Royce in particular got a shed load of money. I think 600 mil Rolls-Royce got.
Stagecoach, you name all the big companies we know.
Nice to chuck money at Brian Souter again. It's not like he needs it.
Well, the other thing is Parliament has passed legislation now that allows companies who think they're going to be bankrupt, not who are going bankrupt, but who think there might be a possibility. It's a bit like the what's it called, Section 11 in the States, where effectively you can blackmail your workforce into taking worse conditions.
And there's no surprise that they've pushed that through.
Well, it's been pushed through under the coronavirus legislation to ease the burden of business. And the main thrust of it seems to be to ease the burden of business by having to pay wages.
It's to ease the burden of shareholders. It's to make sure that shareholders can protect their profits by making people redundant or making people take conditions that they would never consider taking.
I mean, look, there's no question of it. They talk about the new normal. When it comes to what business is going to look like, once we're through the worst of this crisis, it will be a new normal. For example, I'm not expecting to be able to get a cheap flight to Bristol to visit my grandchildren. I'm not expecting to get a cheap hotel room when I get there. These are just
Oh no, these are all companies that are being protected.
Yes, but I'm still not expecting them to be as cheap as they were.
No, these are all companies that will use coronavirus. Well, I'm sorry, the word here is Americanization. Every bit of
exactly
legislation that's been passed at the moment to do with business, food, manufacturing, it's all about allowing us to get nearer to an agreement, a trade agreement with America. And that, in effect, means they're trying to turn us into the 51st state of America.
Well, look, I've got a little an aside, but you'll like this one. You don't think you missed it. We're talking about Serco that have got the contract for the track and trace system, whatever they call it in England. In a leaked email, the chief executive revealed how he doubted the test and trace scheme would evolve smoothly, but he wanted it to cement the position of the private sector in the NHS supply chain.
And because of the legislation in place now, this isn't going to be scrutinised. None of it's going to be scrutinised by Parliament. Not that it makes a huge difference, but at least it gets into the public domain. It'll still pass because the Tories have an 80-seat majority. But, I mean, the classic is the chlorinated chicken. You know, we will never have chlorinated chicken, da, 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 da. Well, maybe we will have chlorinated chicken because we need a deal which is going to be, what, 0.6% of GDP with America.
I don't know if you've seen Michelle.
Royally screwed here. Sorry.
I don't know if you've seen Michel Barnier, mate, but he basically came out about an hour and a half ago and said that the negotiations are going nowhere. And he basically accused Britain of showing bad faith. They're going back on everything that's in the political declaration. They've decided that with their 80-seat majority, what Boris agreed to in October and what he signed off on in October doesn't matter anymore. And Europe can away and take a run and fuck it themselves.
Well, it means that it makes things worse for this country in future negotiations. If they go into future negotiations with other countries, the UK will be seen as having the bad faith, it's called, isn't it?
Aye.
I mean, what's the point of doing a deal with Britain? Because they're just going to roll.
Well, we know Brexiteers are liars. That's how they won the argument in the first place. But you had Peter Bone on the telly last night basically saying, well, it's either a Canada deal or an Australia deal. There's no such thing as an Australia deal. Australia doesn't have a deal.
WTO rules.
But WTO rules will not apply in this situation. Europe is not going to roll over and give the UK WTO rules. Europe is going to impose massive tariffs because Britain has decided that the deal that we struck in October isn't good enough for us, so we want a new one.
Well, it's worth saying at this point that given we've only got less than a month to the end of June, and the question was raised somewhere in the press today, in some detail in a European magazine, does any extension to the current transition period have to be agreed by the end of June? And basically, the short answer is yes. If it's not done by the end of June, we're out.
Well, no. The trade negotiations continue to the bitter end. Right up until the 31st of December, we can negotiate a trade deal. What we can't do is extend that time period after 31st of December.
Well, after the 1st of July, we can't extend.
Well,
no,
yeah.
the extension wasn't going to happen. Sure, the extension wasn't going to happen anyway. Boris can't ask for it.
You can't politically, you can't ask for it.
Aye. So there's no extension.
Sorry,
has to be done
I think he could. I think he could ask for it and survive. He won't.
No, we won't.
I don't think he can, mate. I don't think he has the support in that Conservative Party to extend. He could get it through Parliament, but he'd be using Labour votes and SNP votes to get it through Parliament, which would be an absolute death knell to his career. He would be removed forthwith.
Once Brexit's done, I don't think he's got much chance of surviving. To be
I don't
honest.
think he particularly cares, mate. The job scares the absolute shit out of him, judging by how he's been acting since he got it.
Have you seen that lovely? I think it's obviously fake. It's the three of them lined up in the number 10 daily briefing. And instead of the podium where the Prime Minister would normally stand, there's a fridge.
Aye, seen it.
And he steps out of the fridge.
Very good. Well, that kind of brings us on to the constitutional issue, chaps. Leslie Riddick had a piece in the National yesterday, which I've read before, because effectively what it was saying is we need to reboot the Yes movement and we need leadership for the Yes movement. Your thoughts, gentlemen?
I didn't read it, mate. I've seen her stuff before, and I enjoy her stuff, but like you say, we've seen it all before.
Well, I was very interested in Peter A. Bell's critique of that article and the one by Joanne. Jesus, sorry, her name.
Cherry.
Joanna Cherry, yes. He covers both of them in one of his very incisive essays, which he published yesterday. He likes both articles, he likes both people. On the other hand, he, as usual, is very good at tearing apart people's arguments if they leave any small gap in it. Basically what Peter A. Bell says, look, the only thing that the independence movement can definitely agree on is to dissolve the union. Everything else is complicated.
Okay, well, my stance on this hasn't changed. It's all very well criticizing, but give me a methodology, give me a route map, then I can start taking you seriously. Nobody is saying what the alternative is and how we use that alternative.
What alternative?
To a Section 30. Everybody's saying, if you like, the extreme, that is the wrong word, but the differences of opinion on this. What exactly is Peter A. Bell suggesting we do?
What he's saying is it is not up to the independence movement or the campaign. They are different, and I like the way he clarifies the difference. But the point is, it's every time, let's say, we're challenged by unionists to say, right, what's the economy of Scotland going to look like if you get independent? That shouldn't be the question that we answer. That we should be turning it around and saying, well, look at the state of the economy we've got now. It's up to you, the unionists, to explain.
Well, Stuart, you've actually just underlined my point.
Which is?
Which, I mean, he's not giving us a route map. He's telling us how to make an argument. There's no point making an argument without a route map to the goal.
Well, his argument is that you are wrong to make a route map. It is the unionists' challenge to stop us going that we should be facing.
Going where? Going how?
Normal independent country status.
Right. If we were independent, that's an argument we could make. We're already independent. You tell us as unionists why we should give up our independence to join the union.
Well, there's a good argument. I like that one.
Right. But we're not independent, Stuart. We're in a union. And unfortunately, we have to do the fighting to get out of it.
You're starting to sound like somebody that's already lying on the floor.
Stuart, okay, great.
Been trampled on.
Stuart, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go and lie on the floor right now when you tell me how to get to independence.
Well, I recommend Peter Bell's article yesterday.
No. You don't get a cop-out on this one.
Oh, I'm not needing a cop-out.
You tell me how we get to independence without having to make any arguments.
You're right. You could, if you focus on the one thing that everybody that wants independence can agree on. You could turn around and say that would be independence. The only trouble is that can be a bit vague. And we could have you and I could be arguing, as we are now, about how to get there. He suggests instead of focusing on independence, we focus on dissolving the union. That is one simple thing that all of us who want independence could agree on.
Stuart, that's true. Unfortunately, it's not just about those of us who want independence. We have to win an argument or a campaign with the 40-odd% that are quite happy to stay in the union at the moment. And saying dissolve the union to them isn't going to do that.
Well, who knows? I don't think it's been a phrase. There's been no campaign to dissolve the union yet. We've had loads of campaigns for independence.
And that's why Peter is running that campaign, because it's his hashtag. He came up with the phrase, hashtag dissolve the union. That's why he keeps battering on about it now.
Yeah, but he made
the
a very
reality
good
of dissolving that union, there has to be a political manner of doing it.
Read yesterday's article. I believe he made a very good case for it yesterday.
Yeah,
I've read it, and I think it's a decent article, but it doesn't come to the point of how we get people to dissolve that union.
I mean, it's like he's arguing if we get enough people to have a mindset that the union is dissolved, it will suddenly magically become dissolved. The Westminster government, the Tories especially, will sit in their armchairs and go, look at those funny Scots guys who are acting like they're not in a union anymore. There has to be a legal political framework to get out of the union.
Nori, the only
mindset doesn't do it.
The only legal political framework is UDI.
Well, that's an illegal political framework.
How is it? How is it illegal? Scotland's a co-signatory to the Acts of Union. If the Scottish Parliament decides it has the power, who in Westminster is going to deny, other than try to shut them, which they might try and do, but who at Westminster can say the Scottish Parliament does not have the power to set aside the Acts of Union, as the Scottish Parliament is a co-signatory to it?
I totally agree with you. It's been my argument for years that we should. I'm not sure we can do it under what is termed the British Constitution. I'm sure there's enough traps in there that say we can't, but we should simply withdraw from the Treaty of Union. I would be a little bit more subtle about it. I would ask to renegotiate the Treaty of Union.
Can you imagine?
Nori, oh dear, you said the wrong word there. You said ask. Like if you're going to take your independence, you don't ask your colonial master.
Right. So will you now finally admit that what you're advocating is UDI?
Well, possibly, but it's. I'm not going to say yes yet because it has connotations to a generation like you and me that perhaps young people may not have.
Who cares about the connotations that it has, Stuart? This is about the future, not the past.
Well, that's
I don't care what connotations it's got about Rhodesia. People can't even fucking remember the name Rhodesia. Half the people in the Yes movement couldn't spell it.
Well put.
It's about tomorrow. It's about the future, and it will have to be UDI. It will have to be the Acts of Union set aside. And I don't think this present SNP, as it is constituted at the moment, is willing to go down that path. But I still hope that we can put the Yes movement can find ways to pressure them into going down that path.
The reason that I'm in favour of suggesting that we renegotiate the Treaty of Union is because it's a path that everybody's already seen with what the Tories did in Europe. I don't for a minute think it would work, but it becomes a sustainable argument because Thatcher did it, Cameron did it, Bojo's done it. Every Tory leader since we joined the EU has renegotiated the treaty.
Aye. It'd flush out their unwillingness to move. It would flush out their absolute unwillingness to move. And it would also negate any need to even have the discussion. I mean, we didn't want to discuss it anyway, but any need to even have a discussion with the ridiculous unionists in Scottish Labour and the Labour Party as a whole about their idea for radical federalism. Let's be honest, You can't sell federalism to Scotland until you've sold it to England, and you'll never sell it to England.
It's not going
They
to
had
work.
to put radical in there to get the Corbynistas on board.
Aye, that's to try and dredge up some support for the droves of left wingers who are leaving.
Look, the last politicians to successfully use that term in the United Kingdom were the Thatcherites. So radicals got nothing to do with the left necessarily.
Well, and it's normally associated with the left. Anyway, you totally sidetracked me by getting in with Peter A. Bell before we talked about Leslie Riddick's piece. My problem with Leslie Riddick's piece was it's this usual. We need leadership. And the only people that are going to want to lead are people with their own agenda. I've yet to see somebody not of the left put themselves forward to lead the Yes movement.
I'm yet to see anybody credible that the Yes movement would spend more than 5 minutes tearing down.
There's a couple. DL, I think, could do it, but I'm not sure he's got the personality.
I thought he was dead.
Not Tam DL, from Commonweal.
Alpine.
No, not McAlpine.
Who's
The
DL?
guy that does all the, is it not DL? The one that does all the reports. Maybe I've got that wrong.
I think I can be. There's a couple of people in the SNP Commonweal group that make for interesting reading, but then anybody that's in that group would be seen as challenging Nicola Sturgeon by being more involved with the Yes movement, wouldn't they?
Well, there's nobody. I mean, with the possible exception of Leslie herself, there's nobody that springs to mind as a leader.
Well, can I throw in, rewind slightly to what Jimmy said about UDI and it not having the connotations to the current generation that it has for you and me, Norrie. I'm going to throw in a word that I don't really fully understand, but apparently the young people do, and they're called influencers. Apparently, Joe Bloggs from Muirhouse can get himself an internet link and suddenly be an internet star with 10 million followers as an influencer.
What? I'm sorry, I don't understand the context to independence.
Well, you could. I mean, these people appear on the internet. They'd be
Right.
well below our horizon, Norrie. We don't. They don't go to the bowling club.
There's none out there. Trust me.
Well,
you just take a look at indie Twitter. There is no leadership out there.
The guy I would think of in that category is, forgotten his name, the playwright.
Alan Bissett.
Alan Bissett. He appeared on the scene during the 2014 referendum, and I would consider him an influencer.
I like that. Now you're bringing me up a good memory there, Norrie, because that was an exciting part of the 2014 referendum campaign, was the cultural people that grew up. And what were they called? They even had a day on Princess Street. I've got a video of them.
I remember what they were called. It wasn't Artists for Indie, but it was.
They were all young people,
Yeah.
totally not from any political background, and they suddenly appeared and they made it all exciting and interesting.
Well, I see
An exciting
nobody.
and interesting day on Princess Street is all well and good, mate. But let's be honest, we have plenty of them every August, and they haven't made a blind bit of difference to Scotland's politics in the last 40 years.
Well, kind of the point I'm making is, at the moment, I can see, and I'm hearing no suggestions, that's including from Leslie and Joanna Cherry, of leadership for the Yes movement that's out with the SNP, I should add, because we really do want the two different strands. And I can see no pathway from Peter A. Bell. So in a lot of ways, it's rehashing the old stuff.
Which suits the SNP. I think maybe we'll have to be a bit more, to use the word, radical about it. Maybe we should support the second list vote being used for people other than the SNP to pressure them, because the Yes movement has hundreds of thousands of people in it, and without direction, it's a waste of time. All it is an excuse for a good jolly to go on a march, get some nice pictures, but you didn't achieve anything by nice pictures.
I think that's possibly the strongest argument for a B-team indie party for the list, is actually to give the SNP a bit of a fright.
Yeah, well, there's a good argument.
I don't think it would be successful electorally, but I do think it could do a job in giving the seat warmers a bit of a shock.
Plus, I don't think that would be a huge disaster if next May's Holyrood election wasn't won by a majority SNP party. It's not, after all, where have they got us in the last few years, after 2014?
I think you're 110% wrong.
Aye, so they are with that one. If they can get a majority, great. If they get close to a majority and have to use the Greens and whoever else is going to back them, good.
Do you think we're going to get any closer to independence if we get another majority?
Well,
we've not got one now.
It's dependent on what's in the manifesto.
That's what I mean, we've got one now.
We've not got one now, Stuart. They didn't get a majority. They're backed by the Green Party.
Yeah, all right. Okay, fair enough.
And the last time the SNP got a majority, we had a referendum. Don't forget that. The only time we've been given a referendum is when the SNP won the election with a majority, because they took the power and used it. They've just they're not in a position to do that at the moment because they can't trust some of their own backbenchers, and they didn't particularly trust Alison Johnson.
And don't forget, the SNP also had a charismatic leader at the time who was prepared to take risks.
That didn't.
Who will never ever come back. So let's be clear on that. Alex's political career is effectively finished.
I wasn't suggesting.
And let's move on.
I wasn't suggesting that he would. Have you noticed, by the way, that the support for the two journalists that are being prosecuted by the Crown Office for involved with the Alex Salmond scandal have now got support of, as well as famous people from all over the world. They've got over 6,000 signatures supporting them. Kenny McCaskill, who used to be Justice Secretary at Holyrood, has also written an article supporting them. So things move on.
Actually, Kenny McCaskill's article was surprisingly good. He's gone up in my estimation since he pissed off down to Westminster.
He put the boot in, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Norrie, you'll be pleased. I just noticed something before we came on for the ONS statistics in England. Presumably they were released this morning because, well, you can the Tories take it the trash day Friday. They would hope that people wouldn't notice things like that. But the ONS have come out and said that the majority of those 13,000 excess deaths in England that haven't been attributed to COVID are most probably undiagnosed COVID. So that's an extra 13,000 to be banging on to the death number in England.
It's, if it looks like a chicken, walks like a chicken, and clucks like a chicken, it's probably a chicken.
Exactly, and I think the boy for the ONS heard the clucking yesterday and decided that it was time to put his head above the parapet and take out the trash day.
I mean, there's the interesting thing that I'm finding, I mean, we've already talked about the misinformation, the omission of information in the papers, is going to be the amount of headlines that prove to have been false. I mean, for instance, I cannot see any way to prove that coronavirus getting into care homes was from hospital, people being admitted straight from hospital. I don't see how they can prove that.
No, I think it's an absolute cert that
I think there'll be more than one.
COVID got in because the staff going in. I mean, you couldn't have a situation where the staff were self-isolating inside the home for months. Staff had to be able to go home.
I saw a meme today claiming, and I went and had a look on Holyrood TV to see if I could find it, that Jackson Carlaw on the 10th of March stated that the Scottish Government needed to get bed blockers out into care homes without testing ASAP.
He didn't come out and say that, mate. He was talking about delayed discharge on the 10th of March. Both him and Miles Briggs was the other one. And I seen some footage of them. They were talking about getting delayed discharge people out of hospitals because they were worried about it. But they weren't specifically saying get them into hospitals. Sorry, get them into care homes, regardless of testing. But let's be honest.
Testing.
He didn't. I don't think he mentioned testing at all, mate. But let's be honest. On the 10th of March, that's very, very early in the whole thing, and the issue of testing was that tests, we weren't even sure at that point how reliable the testing was.
Also, it's worth pointing out that bed blocking is an ongoing issue. It's a bit like educational attainment. It's always a political issue. And until the gravity of the coronavirus situation became apparent, any politician was likely to say, would think, oh, I'll mention bed blocking. It's always good.
Aye, it was a safe place for a Tory to go. Just whinge about the bed blocking numbers because they've never been in power in Holyrood, ever, the Tories. So they can say that bed blocking is an absolute disgrace and Holyrood needs to change it.
Well, that's all I'm saying.
It's going to be really interesting, an interesting test of the honesty of our press. All out from this.
Oh dear, sorry. You had to give me a laugh.
Well, while they're not, I mean, as I say, the background today, while not strictly speaking a lie, definitely leaves you with the wrong impression.
Oh, it was sneaky. It was downright malicious in its intent.
Well, as far as I can read, the health secretary was drunk.
Aye, that's what they're inferring. That's
what the headline says.
And even the picture beside it,
aye,
adds to it. You know,
it just goes to show what a shabby tabloid piece of shite the Scotsman's become. I remember watching a documentary about the Scotsman's history, and there'll be an awful lot of ex-Scotsman hacks who are burrowing in their grave looking at what it's become. I mean, it's basically just a regional paper run from England.
Where was it they used to drink? Was it the Jingle and Geordie?
Oh, they drank in a few of them, mate. Jingle and Geordie's a halfway house.
The halfway house in the Jingle and Geordie.
I remember meeting some of them in there.
Mm-hmm.
There'll not be any of them there now, because where are they now? Morrison Street?
No, they're at Orchard Brae, mate. Orchard Brae House.
Brae?
Yeah.
Aye, they're just in their wee office in part of Orchard Brae House these days, mate.
Yeah. That's what the old Lloyd's.
Jesus, I'll have to walk for miles to get to a pub.
Oh no, isn't there the Lermouth Terrace one? Isn't that nearby?
Hotel.
Aye. Well, that's a Travelodge now, mate. Nobody wants to go into the bar of a Travelodge. So that's just the saddest thing on the planet.
That's true. You don't go to the Travelodge for a drink. Can I point out that when we're talking about the press, there was an announcement today that not many will pick up on with Ofcom, the regulator of broadcasting, amongst other things. And they've announced that they will no longer be publishing the results of polling on just what people think of the BBC, ITV, all the main channels. So at a rather inconvenient time, we're not going to find out whether the people trust the broadcasters.
Well, it'll be privatised to the polling companies. The circulation figures are no longer being published.
Well, newspapers,
they're voluntary now.
They're not coming out anymore. It's just a step by step, we're heading into this authoritarian.
We need transparency. We need transparency.
It's up against the wall time soon, Norrie. Get you.
No newspaper ever.
AK-47 ready?
Certainly not. I'm not too old for that.
No. I've got a friend that's got an AK-47 that needs reboring. If anybody out there fancies doing it as a hobby.
Well. I can think of other hobbies.
Sorry, Jimmy. I know what football team you support.
Can I also point with reference to the BBC and its popularity with the people? They've just announced today as well the new boss of the BBC. His name is Tim Davie. Sounds quite friendly. Tim but Dim or Davy. That sounds quite friendly. Turns out he was deputy chairman of the Hammersmith and Fulham Conservative Party. Oh, no surprise there then. Went to a private school and Cambridge University.
Well, he'll be eminently qualified.
Right,
On the BBC, on behalf of the
he's done the
Tory
job
government.
before, mate. He's done the job before. He was acting DG in 2012.
Oh, and he's already been told what to do.
Aye.
Excellent.
There
Excellent.
you go.
He was a safe pair of hands back in the day after some political scandal or other. They removed a DG. So I think he was always kind of promised the job at some point.
So, anybody got anything to finish with?
Looks as though it's going to rain.
Oh, sun's out here, mate. You're in the wrong part of Leith.
You're at the wrong part.
You're
at the wrong end of the street.
Black
Aye.
cloud out there.
Mate, there's always big black clouds when you look south. That's just part of the fucking raison d'etre for being a nationalist.
Oh, okay. And on that note,
I'll say cheerio.
we'll definitely finish. Thanks, Stuart Lockhead. Thank you, Jimmy Hutton. I'm Norris Stewart. Thanks for watching and listening, folks. Keep the comments coming, by the way, folks. We enjoy them, and it's nice to know there are people actually listening out there. Cheers for now. Oh, and we'll be off tomorrow because it's Saturday. Cheers.